are going to have to act if we want to live in a different world.
Moving out.
New construction options. Building.
Command and Conquer, one of the first great pioneering real-time strategy games that came out in the 90s. There are a series of sequels, sort of prequels, sequels to those sort of prequels, other variations, and offshoots. Each game has its strong points. Except this one. This is complete garbage. Let's throw it in the trash and just never talk about it. Anyway, but there is something uniquely special to those of us who grew up in the 90s playing this first game and its linear sequel that I want to share with everyone, even if you never played an RTS in this video. I'd like to try and explain what that something was. You see, in the first Command & Conquer game, later called Tiberian Dawn, the first of the Tiberian Wars, this new green chrysalis appeared and they were spreading like weeds. It was called Tiberium. Tiberium would suck up all the nutrients around it, killed all vegetation in the area, and was toxic to biolife around it. This Tiberium was harvested for power and energy by both factions in a global conflict. GDI, the Global Defense Initiative, is kind of like if the UN got its shit together and had an army of its own. And compared to something like Protoss or Zerg and Starcraft, the main rival RTS at the time, Nod, the opposing faction, at that time was more or less a generic enemy faction against the Global Defense Initiative, seemingly bent on global domination, at that time at least. The gameplay was so much fun and had replayability through the roof. The soundtracks in particular, like the one you're hearing now, were amazing. It really set up the tone for, let's go, wartime strategy, time to build, raise your army general, it's time to act. The mood was exciting, the grass was green, the water was blue, things were bright. Yeah, win the war! Things were familiar. Your soldiers looked like men holding guns. Tanks looked like tanks. Ships, planes, they all looked how we expected them to in the 90s. It was all about an exciting clash of armies with the goal of destroying your enemy's base while building doors and getting better and better units. We were fast and ready to act. And maybe when Tiberian Sun came out, the sequel to it, maybe we thought we'd get more of that same excitement. But you didn't get that. You didn't get brightness and excitement. You got darkness and anxiety. You got dread. As you start in this game, you suddenly realize, oh god, it didn't even matter who won before, GDI or Nod. Tiberium, that thing that was kind of a small problem and would keep going if you didn't get it under control, well, we didn't get it under control. Tiberium won. And home, our planet, Earth, lost. You now enter an apocalyptic world where Tiberium has ravaged the planet. Everything is dark and barren. And while you get future technology now, you see immediately that this is a horrifically polluted world barely holding on by the threads. All your soldiers now have to wear biosuits. Towns, if not signs of old destroyed civilization, were shown more as biodomes, and even then, Tiberium toxins can kill people, including your biosuit soldiers. Ion storms could come out of nowhere on top of the already dark and despair to make clear that the cracks in habitability had gone from showing to crushing our existence. And Nod? Nod got way darker and creepier. leaning strongly into the more dystopian and foreign and mechanical world. They started making cyborgs, purposely making them look and sound monstrously haunting. This world was dark, and the soundtrack, again amazing, but perfect for the new mood of darkness, combat, pushing on in the darkest of times. The music of the tracks, the sounds of the new future tanks, the voice of an evil AI,
Reinforcements have
creepily,
arrived.
spiderly, mutant cyborgs, all gripping into the darkness of this change in atmosphere, this change in mood, that even surpasses anything felt in Starcraft. And I mean no offense to the SC players, save maybe the change in Kerrigan into Zerg. Still, Nod itself was almost nothing compared to the depth of, say, Protoss before. But now, Nod had gone into greater depths of its lore, the religion of worshipping Cain, artifacts like the Tacitus, and even the worship of the very toxic element that destroys our entire ecosystem, Tiberium. And as it turns out, Nod becomes successful in seeding Tiberium all over the planet. Earth is done. And so when you go back to those older games and hear some of those old tracks that you know and love, one of, if not the most famous of tracks from that first game being Act on Instinct, you hear lines like a voiceover. And in one part of one of those voiceovers, it may have seemed like a merely generic background talk at that time, saying we need to move toward more ideas that will actually help bring this thing to an end.
Move toward more ideas that will actually help bring this thing to an end.
We now truly know the desperation of that request is haunting. Because, no sir, this isn't the end. It's the beginning of the death of Earth and the very real possibility of the extinction of the human species. The destruction, the darkness, the death, the storms. The bad timeline is only beginning. So I'm not hating on Starcraft or Age of Empires or Netstorm, I guess, any other RTS that you liked, but Tiberian Sun and its expansion, Firestorm, are noted heavily from many who played these games specifically for its atmosphere. It was, for many of us, one of the first truly dark worlds, not that we entered into, but that we saw happen. It wasn't actually the atmosphere of the Tiberian Sun game alone, and I haven't seen anyone else make this case, but that atmosphere is striking because it is the shift we feel. That shift in tone from Command & Conquer to Tiberian Sun was executed so excellently, with the visuals even subtly, like how creepy the Hand of Nod is when it first comes out, the barracks of the Nod infantry, as well as the music, that first track, Valves, right away demanding you see the dire reality of what has happened to our planet. It's impactful, it's a mood, but it's the mood change, a world change, not just a dark world, but that it goes from bright excitement to dark anxiety that those who played both these games will seldom forget. It and all the tracks and sounds will stay with us forever.
Unit ready.
And I suspect that with today's world, many of us are remembering it now, because with global pandemics our inability to deal with even basic social issues and uprising, we are holding on to very few threads, excuses, distractions, entertainment, inebriation, snapping year by year, month by month, and day by day. Threads that were preventing us from doing anything about the fact that we are watching our planet as we know it, and certainly in terms of human life, die right before our eyes. Massive forest fires all over the world, massive flooding, bigger and bigger hurricanes, all of it. We who felt this darkness growing up into individuals, going from this to this from a video game, may be reminded of it now as we come to grips with the incredible likelihood that this is a transition we will witness again, but this time in reality for our world, not in the far future, but now. We are already in the bad timeline, the age of death. So I ask you to remember one thing. We are going to have to act if we want to live in a different world.